Hello guys and welcome. Today we're going to talk about the case of Hannah Inyama and we're just going to jump right in. So our story starts with a caretaker banging on a door on one of the houses. He's there to collect rent. He bangs, even more on the door and no one answers. He calls the tenant. He can hear the phone ringing inside but no one answers. He then peeps through the window to see if he could figure out this bizarre mystery that's unfolding right in front of his eyes. When he does this, he sees a scene. So he sees that in the living room there's someone on the floor, covered with a blanket, and then he sees flies around this person. And then the smell hits him. He then realizes what he's looking at. He was looking at a dead body, wrapped in a blanket on the living room floor. Now, alarmed, he phones the police to inform them of his discovery. The police rush there, they break the door, and they're met with a scene from a nightmare. The police do a walkthrough to find out if there's anybody else hurt, there's anybody else in the home. And they first they find the body in the living room, and then they go to other areas in the home. Now when they get to the kitchen, they find someone there. They find a woman on the floor screaming, "Oh my God," and they're stumped. They don't understand this. Why is this woman on the floor screaming? Why is there a dead body in the house? Why is the woman living with a dead body? Who killed the person on the floor? They don't know. So they arrest this woman, thinking that she could have done this. Now let's go back to a little and find out what really happened. Hannah Inyama is or was a professor. I'm not sure if she's still lecturing at this point. But at that time, she was a lecturer. She was a professor, actually, at the University of Nairobi. She lectured on nursing, and herself, she was trained as a specialist in post-resuscitation of the critically ill. So she was quite intelligent and definitely well trained. She lived around the South Bay area in a 2-bedroom house. She lived there with her son. There's no mention of the father, but she lived there with her son, Emmanuel Inyama. Now, Hannah was a pretty religious person, and she was part of this, a religious group who would regularly visit her home and would hold prayer sessions or worship sessions, at her home. She was quite devoted to this religious group. Now, I don't know what the religious group is or what they believed in, but she was part of this religious group. So everything was quite okay, before. The caretaker described Hannah as being quite normal, quite chatty, easygoing, and everything was alright. And I'm not sure, what really happened. Did she lose her job? What really happened to Hannah? Now, she started struggling with her rent, and her house rent was 40,000 shillings. That's crazy expensive for a 2-bedroom house. But she was paying 40,000 for her 2-bedroom house, and she lived there with her son, and she had started to struggle. So she fell behind on her rent, and then all of a sudden she just changed. She became a recluse. She wouldn't talk to anyone. She would just, be reserved. And the only people who visited her were this religious group again. We don't know which religious group, but they visited her there, hold prayer sessions there, and then they would leave Hannah there. But Hannah would not be seen out and about as she was before. Now let's go back to the police arriving at the house. So the caretaker was there that day to demand rent from Hannah. He bangs on the door, vigorously. Hannah doesn't open up. He calls Hannah. Hannah doesn't pick up, but he can hear the phone ringing. So he peers through the window to see maybe if Hannah's hiding or what's going on. And then he sees the body. He sees the body on the floor. He's alarmed. He's thinking maybe Hannah is also hurt, and then he calls in the police. So when the police get there and they find her on the kitchen floor screaming, "Oh my God!" they're confused. I don't know. They don't know what to think now. There's clearly a dead body that's has begun decomposing in the living room. So they're confused. Was Hannah the one to do this? So they think that maybe Hannah had killed her son and then tried to cover it up by living with the dead body in the house. So that's their theory. They arrest Hannah for this, and they go and interrogate Hannah. Now, Hannah tells them that, the story that Hannah tells them is quite bizarre and disturbing, and it's even more shocking to the police again. So Hannah tells them that her son fell ill, and, she didn't take him to the hospital because she doesn't believe in hospitals. Remember, Hannah is trained. She is trained as a nurse. She teaches nursing, but apparently now she doesn't believe in hospitals. Okay. And that she didn't take him to the hospital, and she was just trying to pray for the son to get better. So she was just there praying over him, trying to see if he could get better. But his condition worsens, and Emmanuel ends up dying in the home. Now, when the son dies, for Hannah, it doesn't really, she doesn't really click. It doesn't really click in her head. For her, she thinks she can pray over this child and bring him back to life. And even after she was arrested, she still believed that her son wasn't really dead, that she was under demonic attack, and that she was praying over him so that the son could get better. So that's the story she gives to the police, and you can imagine this is disturbing, confusing even to the police. They don't understand this. Like, how could someone not even report a dead body and live with it for 10 days? So they decide to do a little digging because maybe they're confused. They don't really believe Hannah. They go to dig in a little further. So they take the body for the autopsy report. Now, the police, after the autopsy report comes out, it reveals that Emmanuel, nobody attacked Emmanuel. Emmanuel died of excessive bleeding in the stomach, which was caused by severe ulcers. He had very severe ulcers, and that was what eventually led to his death. So Hannah didn't do this. Hannah was maybe she did just take him to the hospital, and maybe that's what Hannah is responsible for. But Hannah didn't kill her son. Her son just died because of that. She just didn't take him to the hospital on time, and also she did report it. So that's another thing. So they established this, that Hannah was not the one to do this to her son. And when she's brought to the court, she undergoes an examination, and they determine that Hannah isn't sound of mind. Now, I'm not sure what the sound of mind means. It's not clear what she was actually diagnosed with, so we don't know what she was diagnosed with, but she was given medication, and then she was released into the custody of her parents, and then she was given the medication, and she used to take them regularly and also appear to a probation officer every Friday. So that was the case. I mean, that's a bizarre case. It's actually the most bizarre case I've ever heard of. I've never heard of someone living with a dead body inside the house, trying to resurrect it. I've never heard of that. And can you imagine if the caretaker hadn't insisted on the rent that day? Probably Hannah would have just continued living with a dead body in the house, and it's decomposing. So bizarre. Disturbing, scary. So I mean, it's so scary, really. The caretaker is quite nosy, and I don't like caretakers. I've even heard of very strange cases where caretakers actually yank the door if you don't pay the rent. He's quite nosy for sure, for peeping through someone's window, But maybe it's a good thing he did, because he eventually just led to the discovery of this. But yeah, that's what happened. It's a very bizarre case. And about this religious group, I don't know. There's no mention of it. It's not linked to any churches. I don't know. There's just, they say religious group. They don't really point the finger to someone. And her friends and family actually, you know, after Hannah was arrested, they said that she was in a cult. The neighbors used to hear her, you know, the group would regularly visit her home. And I'm asking myself, why did anybody among the religious group people report that Hannah was living with a dead body? Why did nobody report this? I mean, somebody should have known that there was a dead body in their house. Or were they trying to help Hannah resurrect the body? What was really going on with this religious group? You know, and I'm making air quotes here. What was really going on? Why wouldn't they report it? Because they regularly visited her home. But it's not clear whether they visited her after the boy died. It's not really clear. But the neighbors say they heard them coming regularly and singing in there. So I'm like, why didn't they report it? It's so strange. And there's no mention of this religious group. Some refer to it as a cult. I don't know about a cult here, but I mean, it's so bizarre, it's so strange and mysterious that they're not mentioned anywhere. They're not even pinpointing us to any direction. And they're not mentioned, none of them. I don't know if any of them were even questioned about this. But I think they should, because that would help us understand better what really happened here. So it's a very strange case, one that I've never heard of. It's quite bizarre, quite shocking to me as well. But no matter what you say about Hannah, from my standpoint, I believe Hannah was just a mother in grief. She was just a mother grieving for her son. No matter what you call her, no matter what religious group you call, whether it's cult or not, but I believe that Hannah was just grieving for her son. She just didn't know how to let go. She was just sad her son was gone, and she loved her son so much. If you see the pictures with Hannah and her son, she seems the happiest. Her eyes light up, her smile lights up. She just seems happy in that moment. And I think that's what really happened here. She was just scared of letting go of her son. She didn't want to accept it, and she just tried to do everything she could. Hannah was just a mother grieving for her son. And that's all there is to it. And I'm really sorry for Hannah for losing something that's that precious to her. I'm really sorry, and I'm hoping she gets the help she needs. She gets counseling so that she knows how to process the grief and rebuild her life again. And I'm hoping also, and I'm really sorry for Hannah's family, as also for Emmanuel, and I'm hoping that Emmanuel rests in eternal peace. So that's it for the story of today. It's quite bizarre. She stayed with a body in a house for quite a long time, but I totally understand why she did it. And that's it. Thank you all for listening today. And if you have any mental challenge or issue, I've left resources down below. Check them out. Seek help. Alright? Seek help. There's help out there. Thank you all for listening. Goodbye. Look after each other. Goodbye.